Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their successes, become inspired to meet the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reesall, and along with my ghost host, Mr. Nobody himself, the blank chair. I'm so sad about it, Christian Webb. He's not with us today, but he'll be here next week. But you, unfortunately, do not get the wonderful, magnanimous nature of the Christian environment.
I don't. I just get a lot of you.
A lot of me. And I'll tell you what, I've been drinking this ghost, I don't know, sour pink lemonade thing for the last hour, and it is doing me right. Like, I'm ready to go. So We're gonna have a good show. Today we're joined by my good friend Ben McDonald with Destination, not Destiny, Destination Wealth Management. But also he is a very special guest because he has a podcast himself, the Anything But Typical podcast. I was lucky enough to be on. I don't know, I guess a month ago now, plus or minus.
Yep. But, and the day that we're recording this was the day that Anything But Typical released your episode. So it came out this morning.
That is awesome. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, so hopefully it's awesome, but I'm sure it was.
It's one of the best.
Oh,
it's elite.
Listen, I don't even care if you're lying. You know, we're also, in the background, you don't see them, but we're also accompanied by some of Ben's content creators and managers and things like that. So if you hear me reference the Peanut Gallery at some point, that's who I'm talking about, just so our listeners know. But I'm going to try to make them laugh as much as possible.
Yeah, we're going to build a laugh track in.
We'll do like a Chuck Lorre, like a what's the name of that show? 2.5 Men type of situation.
Right.
Just to have something stupid going on.
But only two people.
Yeah. Two guys, one content manager and one other, I don't know, something like that. Anyways, so let's talk about you, Ben. So you've been in wealth management now for 10 years.
Yep.
And so how did you get into that originally? What was the sequence of events?
Yeah. So I had no plans to go even remotely close to this industry. My plan was I was going to coach college basketball, and I was going to be a college athletic director.
Who do you root for? Let's just start out of this.
So growing up, I was a UConn fan for basketball because I grew up near Syracuse, and everybody was a Syracuse fan, so I just went opposite.
I was making sure you weren't a Duke fan. No. We would turn this thing off right now.
Well, all right. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right. So UConn, sorry.
Yeah, so my first business was a basketball training company, and started that when I was 19. And I sold it when I was 24. And we grew up pretty impoverished, like watching my dad beg the repo guy not to take our only vehicle.
Yeah.
And so this was I was 24, and it's the first time I ever had money in my account.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 24, and you're moving to a new state and starting a new life.
So you moved to North Carolina at that point?
did at that point at 24.
And was there anything particularly that made you move to North Carolina, or it's just because it's awesome here? And
it's not. Yeah, it was just chasing you. It was really...
From here, born and raised, baby. So North Carolina.
It was basically going somewhere in the southeast where there's more opportunity, better weather, all the reason everybody leaves upstate New York.
Yeah.
But yeah, money was in the account for the first time, and I had studied business and finance and all that, but never had any applicability. So I was either going to spend it or I was going to start investing it. And while I was coaching college basketball for those next couple of years, I got more and more into what I was doing on the investing side. And wanted to start a family, have kids, and I didn't want to drag my family from one state to the next, just trying to move up the college basketball coaching ladder.
Yeah, that's what you would have had to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah, at that time, I went to an interview for a head coaching junior college job in Maryland.
Oh, wow.
I got back, and the next day went to Tennessee for a Division I assistant coaching interview. Mm-hmm. And it was the big realization coming back from Tennessee of this is what the next 15 years are going to be at least, just to get to a decent spot. Mm-hmm. And it's not the life or lifestyle that I wanted.
No.
So I had basically wanted to take the coaching skills that I had developed and then the business growth and development stuff that I'd done, because I'd bought and sold, or started and sold a company already. And it blended into those two things, plus the finance and investing turns into that's wealth management, because I'm coaching my clients and I'm empowering them, and we're putting a game plan together. It's all the same stuff, just over a desk instead of in a locker room.
Isn't it so funny how that happens? Like I think about the wildly different careers that I've had in my life, and yet I can look back at buying and selling classic cars, and that applies to marketing, and that applies to podcasting and representing yourself and everything like that.
But until you make those connections to other people, nobody sees it. Right. When they hear, hey, you were an athletic director, you were a college basketball coach, and now you're a wealth advisor. How the hell did that bridge gap?
Right.
So yeah, until you see it and step back and it's like, oh, there's a lot of correlation here.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to make that connection.
For sure. So you've been in wealth management now for 10 years, and then was there anything particularly about about the process, about where you're at right now? I'm sure you had ups and downs, lefts and rights, and everything in between.
Yeah.
But 10 years is a long time in an industry these days. So you must have loved it, or the lifestyle it provides for you. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a really low risk bet. I'm 26 years old, and I got offers from a few different places, Merrill, Morgan, Jones, and I was going to get training and a salary, and if it didn't work out, I could just go somewhere else, and I would have gained a whole lot of knowledge anyway. So the bet was extremely low, and anything from college basketball is going to be a raise.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Might as well work for nonprofits at that point.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So it was a really low bet, and it's like, I'm going to do this. Worst case scenario, I get out, and it just clicked. And about a year and a half or 2 years in, I started at Edward Jones. They tapped me on the shoulder to take over a fledgling firm, or a fledgling office up in Huntersville, so north of Charlotte. And I had to turn it around and make it profitable, which worked great because of my background of running and building a business. But I always knew that I was going to go off on my own eventually.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. So you're a year and a half in, relatively young to be fair, in the wealth management center. Was there anything particularly at that point in time that I don't want to say drove you by purpose necessarily, but was there anything about that where you kind of looked in the mirror and you're like, wow, I'm really good at this. Like I could definitely take this the whole way, so to speak.
Yeah, really good question. The turnaround of that office was a big eye opener. It was more than, hey, I think I'm pretty good. It's like, oh, I can actually do something with this. Whereas the start of the career, you're still so heads down. You're just trying to get the next client. You're trying to figure it all out.
Grind.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So probably about 3 years into the career, seeing the stability of what had happened in that transition with the office and how smooth it was running so quickly, that was the first time where it's like, I think I can do something real here.
Yeah. It's funny. I always try to ask people if they ever had like an epiphanous moment where they kind of look in the mirror and they think like this is what it's all about, type of thing. So do you think you were passionate about wealth advisement before that, or what drove you to that particularly? I mean, were you just applying random jobs? Like you could have kind of done anything at the time, or
no? So something I do is every year I go to the mountains for about 4 or 5 days by myself, solo trip, and just disconnect.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I do it to reflect and really figure out what the priorities are. And so I did that when I was thinking of changing careers, and I came back with, I really like all these aspects of being an advisor. And then the other one I considered was buying and selling businesses. And the advising, it included the personal impact.
Right.
And especially growing up the way that I did, the thought of, hey, I could build a career where not only am I going to do well for myself and my family, but I can also have a deeper impact on other people and create that ripple effect. That was the thing that drew me to it.
Yeah.
And then it was just, let's see if this works or not.
Yeah. I find myself thinking about that a lot because, I mean, obviously throughout the course of your life, you seek different things professionally, personally, and all of that. But it's like when I originally entered undergrad, I studied biology, like we were talking about before the show, and I wanted to be a doctor, And it's interesting because I look back on that thought and I'm like, I'm the furthest thing from a doctor you've ever met in your life. Have you ever heard me speak for a second? Like, could you imagine you get in the office in the waiting room?
You're coming in.
Be like, what's up, dude? I'm gonna chop open your brain real fast and we'll see. Couldn't do it. But the other thing is with that career, and shout out to all the doctors out there, but it's like there's some warriors, man, because you're seeing somebody. Every single patient that you see is not having a good day, so they have to have that fortitude to.
Yeah, it takes a rare person.
Yeah, for sure.
And my industry is significantly watered down from that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of times where I'm sitting across from clients and it turns into a therapy session.
Oh, sure.
But never to the extent of the impact that you're seeing, at how close you are to reality with doctors.
So I definitely want to talk about your podcast, but before we get to that. Have you had any, because you're talking about the therapy sessions of wealth management and advisement and things like that, have you had any just total off the wall meetings with clients where they were and how do you navigate that? Like, have you ever had like a client that sat down with you and like, oh, I want to spend $100 million
Yes.
on gator tails or something, something like that.
Way too often.
Oh yeah. So how do you navigate that, and like what's your strategy for the wild ideas?
So I treat it, I mean, we mentioned doctors, right? I treat myself and now the advisors underneath me as we are the same type of professional as a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer. You're going to come to us for our advice. And it's weird that I think the entertainment factor of stocks, that you get people coming in saying, I think we should do this. And if you do that to a doctor of like, hey, I'm the WebMD doctor, I looked these symptoms up, I think we should do this.
I'm pretty sure I have cancer, right?
Right. Yeah,
that's
the
what
doctors
WebMD always says.
immediately, they're going to dismiss you. Same thing with an attorney. So it's basically the same way here of if you're going to come with some idea that you want to just buy 1,000 shares of some stock nobody's ever heard of, great. Let's do a play account that you can just go mess around and it doesn't impact your actual plan.
Your wealth.
Yeah. Our job is the serious stuff. Our job is to get you where you want to go and make the right decisions.
Yeah. Can you think of any particular super funny thing that a client has brought to your attention? Just out of curiosity.
Well, during the GameStop and AMC, I got a lot of calls from people
about that.
And you could tell how in tune they were to social media,
right?
Of which ones called a few weeks in and which ones called 3 months after it was done.
Oh yeah, sure.
But yeah, I got phone calls for months of, hey,
about that.
I heard about this GameStop thing.
Yeah.
Should we be buying that?
Yeah.
And it's just so off the walls because they have no idea what they're talking about. They just saw a video on Instagram or something like that.
The worst thing ever. It's so funny because before the show we were talking about crypto, and I just effectively did it to you with my little fun crypto journey or whatever. But
but that's great for fun money, right?
Yeah,
go do our thing.
Yeah, almost. It's funny because you treat it like almost not zero risk, but you treat it almost like let's see what happens. It could be awesome or it could not or whatever.
Right.
And you just kind of that's a smart approach though for sure. So let's talk about the Anything But Typical podcast. You co-host with our good friend Gary Fry, who is episode 92 for us, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So why are you the better host than Gary Fry? Is the first question.
All right. Well, I brought a list.
Yeah. So okay. All right. Gotcha.
No, Gary and I joined 4 years ago. I've been running my own podcast for about 3 years, and it was great, but we were talking about some of the things that you do better than me, right? So I'm very linear thinking. I'm going to go chronological. I'm going to get the audience through this person's story. Whereas you're really good at, hey, I'm going to jump in here because I find this interesting, and then we'll go somewhere else, and then we'll go. It's more of a journey.
I think it's because I'm highly ADHD. I'm sitting here like.
Well, as a host, I think it works really well for you.
Well, thank you, and it's also way too many energy drinks. I need to be sponsored by energy drinks at this point, I think. But anyway, so Gary
brings a lot +
for
where he's going to pull the thread that he finds most interesting. And so the balance of what he brings and I bring, it's a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario.
Right.
That his skills are different than mine.
Sure.
And so he's going to take us down rabbit holes, and then I'm going to figure out when to pull us back and keep it going. And it's just worked out really well.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show. I love listening to it. I've listened to a couple episodes, and we have it's weird because we're both Charlotte based, and we have. If you look back and you compare the list, because I was looking at this just a couple weeks ago now, but we have we probably have 20 guests in common that we've had, like plus or minus, So it's really interesting, and I'll tell you, having been on your show, it was really an interesting experience for me to kind of sit in the other seat, as you are right now.
Yep.
So it's kind of neat. So why Anything But Typical? Like what was it about that made you want to start doing the podcast, and why Gary of all people? No,
I still don't understand that.
Yeah, why Gary? No,
I lost a bet someday.
That's it. No, so what was it about? Because obviously you knew Gary before, right?
Yeah.
And so what was the next? Like, what made you guys sit down and say, okay, let's do this and run with it?
So my show was called Success Defined because I'm huge on step away from society and figure out how you define success and what you actually want in your life. So that's why I named it that. And Gary was, I think, my 5th guest.
Okay.
And we just hit it off.
Yeah.
It was an hour-long episode, and I think we talked for 3.5 hours that day.
Oh, wow.
We just talked before, turned it on, talked after.
Yeah.
We just clicked.
Yeah. That's good friendship there.
It is. Like, yeah. And that's, it just sprouted into, we went from complete strangers to really close. And we would bounce ideas off of each other if either of us is struggling something into the business, and we would just keep talking. And I was at a point where I wanted to ramp up the amount of episodes and the caliber of guests and putting more things out on social media. And Gary was at the same time trying to figure out how to increase his content and put more and more stuff on Instagram, or on LinkedIn especially. And so I called him up one day. I was out of town. I don't even remember where at this point, but I was in my hotel room, and an idea had just clicked that, hey, I think Gary and I could do this together. And so I called him, ran the idea past him, and he almost instantly said, I love it. I want to call it anything but typical.
That sounds like Gary.
Right, yeah.
Love it. That's what we're gonna do.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And the reason behind the name was he wanted to pull out how we're all unique and different. And he's like, I want to find unique individuals that are going to come and just be authentic and share their stories and show how, almost giving permission to the listeners that they also can be atypical, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I love your show. And one of the things that I'll say that I think you guys do extremely well is exactly that. And I was trying to, you know how sometimes when somebody's like, give me the definition of a word, and you're like, and it's like, give me the definition of atypical, right? And you're like, well, it's anything but typical, like, you know, or whatever. But I was sitting there kind of thinking about the amazingness of being able to shine light on the uniqueness of individuals. So, and you guys do a really good job of that. One thing that I love about your show particularly is, as you're doing that, I feel like you're skipping ahead in your relationship with folks, because you're able to ask them about their life, and that might be something you don't get to hear until you've known them for 10 years. You know,
it's actually why I started podcasting. So I was really early into the financial advising career, and back at Jones, you had to just door knock. That was their prospecting. You're going to go to a neighborhood, go door to door, knock on doors, collect names and phone numbers.
That's tough.
And I'm sitting here
That's
thinking,
crazy to me.
It is
for wealth management. Like,
very crazy.
So you pick. I'm sure you pick nicer neighborhoods to do that. But even still, that's just you would think they'd have something. I don't know. That's wild to me.
It is. It's extremely outdated. I had a buddy who started at Jones and went over to Merrill Lynch, and the first day they said, if we ever catch you knocking on a door, you're immediately fired.
Yeah.
So it's just a polar opposite brand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that
is that the way they still do it, you think? Or
no, because of COVID, it slowed it down.
Sure.
So they came up with other ways for them to grow.
Yeah, that's
right. But basically,
nuts to me.
COVID just forced them into figuring something out. Otherwise, the answer would probably be yes. They'd still be knocking on doors.
I can't even. You know, in the realm that we operate in with digital marketing and whatnot, you just have so many options available at your fingertips.
Yes.
And like you can get in front of somebody without ever having to leave your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can. They can absorb your content and things.
That is exactly how it started. So I'm over here knocking on doors, sweating in the middle of the summer, and it's like, dude, this is crazy.
I can't believe that. That's nuts to me. Like, well, it's one thing if you're doing like a home service, right? Like, and that still is whatever. But it's a completely different thing of like, hey, you know, I'm Ben. Can I manage your money? Like, that's wild.
That's not the person you want to give your money to.
Right.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So there's obviously better ways to do it, right?
Sure.
And I was into podcasts really early on. And so I was like, well, what I'm going to do, because right now I'm just reaching out to people on LinkedIn asking for coffee, which even 7-8 years ago was still starting to get diluted, right?
Yeah.
The LinkedIn messages are so bad. So I would ask people to get coffee, which is what everybody else is doing, and nobody would say yes.
Right.
And if they did say yes, they would think that it was like a prospecting or pitch meeting.
Sure.
So what I did instead is I started sending the same message, but saying, I'd like for you to come on my podcast. So I was basically targeting...
Low barrier to entry, yeah.
Yes. My guests were my ideal clients. And I was able to bring them on and interview them for an hour. And they're happy about it because it gets to highlight them and their company. And it works great for me because now I'm meeting this network of business leaders and business owners who is who I wanted to serve. Right.
Who you want to be with. By the way, I love what you said, who I want to serve. Like that's a very powerful difference. It's a powerful difference of opinion. And you know, we think about business techniques and whatnot, sales processes and marketing behaviors and things like that. But it's incredible because the best sell that you can ever make is the one where you sell nothing. You know, and it's like here you are, you're getting to know these folks, and you just have a conversation about this, that, and the other, and then it's like, oh, hey, we can do that. It's like, oh, I want to do that, and then
Right.
it doesn't matter what it is, but it's like that's how it's the easiest thing ever, and so
it is. And the idea of I'm going to put out and not expect reciprocation.
Yep.
That reciprocation comes back tenfold.
Oh, for sure.
If you're going in with the right approach.
Yep.
If in the back of your mind you're like, I'm doing this to
So I
be
can
selfish.
sell them to whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to get them on here, and then I'm going to bombard them with emails and texts and phone calls for the next 2 months until they become clients.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
No.
And it really clicked the first time I had somebody call me up, and I had never heard from this person before, but he had listened to about 10 episodes and needed an advisor and wanted me to manage his money. And it
Perfect.
was a multi-million-dollar client, and I had done zero work other than recording the podcast.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call.
Yeah. I think Anthony Robbins says where intention goes, knowledge flows, and so it's like I think that even though the primary function of your podcast is to have an amazing show, it's like you get all these reciprocal benefits of the effect of them, so to speak, and it's like you were still intentional about what you were doing, the things you're talking about, the guests you have on the show, all that stuff. So so here's an interesting question, podcast man to podcast man. Do you think that the strategy is always going to work, or do you think we're going to have to pivot?
Oh, really good question. I think this works a lot longer than most things do. I think
agree.
we see a drop off of a lot of other things before we do a podcast.
I agree.
Even though it's getting diluted, right? A lot of people are coming. 90+% don't do anything more than 5 or 6 episodes.
Exactly.
So it looks like there's a ton out there, but most are just dead. So the ones that stay consistent, keep doing high quality stuff, I think that strategy is going to be around for a while.
I agree.
The only caveat is I think the quality is going to need to keep improving.
I agree with that
right?
too. Yep.
4 years ago, you could just put
your
one
phone down,
USB
yeah.
mic in between you and I.
Right.
Yeah, and have your phone videotape us if there's even any video.
Right.
And that was okay. And you hear a podcast now where one of those people doesn't have a good microphone, and you're probably
painful.
turning it off.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. On that point, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's gonna keep working as long as the format keeps working. I read an article, and I don't remember the exact percentages, so I'm just going to make them up just like any other statistic.
No one's going to fact check you.
But I read this article that said it was something like somewhere between like 90 and 95% of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I truly believe that, And it said something like less than 0.5% of podcasts, so 1 in 200 make it over 100. So, and I like.
And you're there.
Hey,
congratulations!
Yeah, you might actually be number 100. I don't know. I have to look at it. But I hope you are, because what if you're 99 and then we just shut it down?
This is it.
Yep, this is it. Well,
this is peak podcasting. You can't do better than this.
This is the final one, the final episode. But I believe that. I believe that people don't stick with it, and I think there's a great business lesson in that too. Is because I think that oftentimes people they underestimate what they can achieve in a long period of time, and they overestimate what they can achieve in a short period of time.
Yep.
So it's like I've seen these shows where they start off with great sparks and ideas and things like that, and they record for like a month or two, and it starts off with a good idea, and you see where it can like be something, and then they're just like, oh, I wouldn't really get anything out of it, and I can't do it. But it's like they don't stick with it.
Yeah, they need that instant gratification.
Yeah.
Which
we're in the world of instant gratification.
We are.
Yeah.
And so for people like us, where we're reaching 100+ episodes, the lack of fortitude from the other 95% dramatically helps us, because all we need to do is have a consistent episode or a consistent podcast on a consistent schedule, and we're going to be way above vast majority of every podcast out there.
Yeah, I think it helps tremendous, and it can be hard. I'm not just talking about podcasts. I'm talking about anything, business or whatever. But I think it can be difficult to get the ball rolling at first. But I think that when I reach out to folks about joining the show, I'll send them a link to it. And I think it almost gives you like a I don't want to say reputation, but it gives you like a they're like, oh, they've been doing this for a while. You got 100 episodes or whatever, And I think people kind of feel that, so they almost expect that it's going to have some professionionality to it, and it's not just going to be something that's coming from nothing, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's an interesting question for you. If you could start another, well, I mean you can, but what would you start another podcast about? It has to be something completely different.
Okay.
It has to be
Interesting.
something. It can't be normal stuff that we talk about. It can't be business. It can't
Okay.
be entrepreneurship. It can't be anything like that. It has to be something totally off the wall.
I could do a Charlotte Hornets and NBA one.
Really?
Yeah.
You
So
think?
my brother and I, he and I have season tickets
Okay.
to the Hornets.
Yeah.
And he's a diehard Thunder fan. So
Interesting.
we pay way too much attention to the NBA.
Yeah,
Both
but
of
you've
us
always
played
been
in
into
college.
basketball.
Oh
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Both of us played in college. I owned and ran a business doing that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, naturally basketball is going to be an interest. But
Yeah.
if you're doing season tickets and you already are pre-exposed to basketball,
Yeah.
you become a sicko pretty quickly of I'm paying attention to
Yeah.
who the Hornets are going to draft next year.
Yeah. If it's any consolation for you, I have been a Carolina Panthers fan since 1995. So
So you feel the pain.
I feel the stab. Oh, the peanut gallery piped up on that one.
Perfect.
That's all it took. That's all it took. We had to start talking smack about our sports teams, and then yeah, no, it hurts. It hurts to be a Panthers fan. It's not. I just expect to be a little bit depressed from August to January of next year, pretty much. It's an awful thing. No, that's a cool topic though. I've thought about doing that just because like we have the resources available to us to like do another show of some sort.
So
it's totally off the wall.
there's a podcast strategy where what you do is you run a podcast about your favorite hobby.
Okay.
And what you end up doing is you get clients from that who also have your interests and hobbies.
That makes sense.
So there was either an advisor or an attorney it was a real estate agent. He loved fly fishing.
Okay.
And he created a podcast
Random.
that was just about fly fishing. And within a year and a half, he had a book of business, and all of his clients loved fly fishing.
Huh.
And he would take all of them fly fishing. That's what they did together.
Yeah.
And they met through his podcast.
That's really interesting.
Yes.
But I mean, it's amazing how people can get into business these days with just strategies and all the above. Like,
Well, because, I mean, take that into, like, if you step back and look at, okay, why did that work?
Mhm.
There's so much of us in our own brains, in our own worlds. We're connected, but you talked about this on a recent episode of there's more ways to reach people than ever before. And yet we're probably lonelier than ever before.
Yeah.
And
it's scary.
So that type of strategy of, hey, I'm just going to talk about who I am and what I like. People want connection anyway. So they're going to be attracted to somebody that has those same interests and hobbies.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden it's not just a real estate transaction or an investment strategy. It's a person that you're interacting with.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that people develop relationships and friendships based on similar interests. So it's probably like these people, it's just like a logical flow, right? It's like he loves fly fishing. These people love fly fishing type of thing, which means they probably are also into this other thing that people that are into fly fishing are into typically. I mean, that's the whole premise of marketing audiences, right? Is that you have these similar interests and things like that. And so the people that he's there for, and then here's the end result, right? It's just the result of the adventure. But like the people that are now his clients that love fly fishing are probably the best damn clients he's ever had because they have a lot in common, And so they're probably like-minded, and they probably treat each other well. So it's interesting, man. I don't know. I think about that a lot. Like I like to do content and things, and I've multiple different hobbies, but I have no idea what I would do, by the way. I have no idea what type of podcast I would do if it wasn't this. But
so I'm trying to figure that out with the acquisitions that we're doing.
Okay.
Because our big thing is we want to grow. We want to have organic growth, which is referrals and things like that, and then the inorganic, where we're going out and acquiring. And I keep redefining and fine-tuning the acquisition and recruiting concepts because I want to bring similar-minded people in.
Okay.
Which means
that makes sense.
The content I'm creating, how I'm reaching out to people, it needs to be people that are similar-minded and like-minded, because otherwise partnerships and things like that don't work out.
Yeah. Have you read the book? It's a great book. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
No, I've heard of it though. I can't remember who writes it.
I can't either. I don't know. I'll show it to you after the show. But the premise of the book, and I'm going to just totally bastardize this and get it wrong. But,
Perfect.
But the premise of the book is that it's easier to 10x a business than to double it if you have the right intention. Because it's like if your revenue for a year is $1 million, and it's like you start thinking about, okay,
Yeah.
what do I have to do in order to get my revenue to 10 million?
Mm-hmm.
Then you automatically know I can't put more time into this because I don't have 10x the amount of time, right?
Right.
And so you start making decisions based on okay, what do I need to do? Who do I need to hire? What processes do I need to have in place? How do I operate? How do I do this, that, and the other type of thing?
Yeah, we were talking about this before the episode, right? Of if I go and try and get one more client, that's going to marginally help. That's going to be the 2x. How do I double? I'm just going to add
Keep
double
doing
the
that
clients.
and grind it right. Exactly. Yeah.
But as soon as you say, okay, how do I 10x it? Now it's, I can't add a client. I need to go find an advisor that's going to bring 100 clients.
Right.
And so when I took the firm over 3 years ago now, it only had $6 million in assets that it managed. It was just this fledgling firm not doing anything. And we're at $600 million now. And it's,
so you 100x'd it.
Right.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And it's because
so is 100x easier than 10x? I'm a little bit confused on my x's.
It is, but when you start at 6,
Yeah.
it's a little easier to have higher ratio, right?
Sure.
If we can do another 100x for the next, then we're cooking with gas.
Well, when you win not if, when you 100x it beyond that, God, that'd be what, 6 trillion in asset, wouldn't it? 100x. What's 100? I don't know. Math's hard. 600.
I don't know.
60 billion.
How many
60
zeros?
billion. 60 billion. 60 billion.
Yeah, that
There we
makes
go.
sense.
Jesus.
Sure.
Having issues. Okay, so when you hit 60 billion, I expect one excellent bottle of bourbon from you. How about that? Just one.
You can hold me to that.
I love how you said that. You said that instantly, by the way. That wasn't even.
Sure.
That's awesome. So, I find myself thinking about that a lot, though. Like people that are interested in buying and selling businesses. It's more common for people to have 3+ businesses than it is for them to have 2.
Yeah.
And that's wild, because from the outside in you expect that, and I think the statistic goes way up from that. Like, I think it's more common for people to have 5+ businesses than 2.
Really?
And a part of that is that when you have 2, you're kind of managing your time or whatever. Yep. But when you have multiple, like, you have to empower people to do the right things.
Yeah. So I had that exact scenario. Yep. When I took over the wealth firm, there was a CrossFit gym that was failing, and it was a buddy of mine that he had just gotten crushed by COVID and he's burnt out and he's ready to go. So do you mind saying the name of the gym, or do you that's fine. CrossFit Huntersville.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I bought it with a couple partners, and those 2 ran it while I was kind of in the back. But it turned into, I'm choosing, am I focusing on the wealth management firm or am I focusing on the gym? And so it was, I'm running and owning 2 different businesses.
Right.
But if you have 5, now you're creating a system to you're focused on how am I running multiple businesses, not how am I in each business. And I think that's the difference of the 2 to 5.
It is. And I think that's something that every entrepreneur struggles with too, because I don't think it's an ego thing necessarily, but I mean, I'd be hard pressed to think that I could hire somebody that's better at doing what I do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah, that's an easy trap to fall into.
It is.
And I've had to accept I need to find people that can do what I'm replacing at 90% of my capacity.
Yeah.
and if they can hit
and
85
to
to 90%,
with it too.
Yeah,
it's tough.
And it's not an easy thing.
No,
but
and
it's you have to. Otherwise, you're the keystone in the company, right? And everything flows through you. And now all you're doing is you're reacting to everything instead of being proactive.
Yeah.
So you never get anywhere.
I find myself in that trap so often. Like, I distinctly remember this is probably a year and a half ago now, but we lost this client, and it was I'll say it was a medium-sized client. So those always suck to lose. It's not like I mean, it always sucks to lose a client, period. But
most of the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Sometimes you assist with the loss.
Yeah, we fired a few.
Yeah.
But sorry, go on.
No, let's talk about that let's talk about that in just a second. But so we lost this medium-sized client. I remember talking to Christian, my ghost business partner / podcast host, that I told him, I was like, if I was managing that account, there's no way we would have lost it. There's no way we would have. And he's like, yeah, but take a step back and think about, you could have managed that at an incremental gain, but you also managed this, and this, which is exponentially more valuable than that,
Right.
And we had this whole conversation about it, because I hate losing. It's like my least favorite thing. Makes me break out in hives. Like
I can't relate at all.
I can't stand it. I'm allergic to it. It makes me anyway. So, but I always reflect on it, and I'm like, you know what, you're right. And that campaign manager that was essentially at fault for doing that. they learned from it, they grew from it, and now they're better than ever. So
Right.
it's like there's a little bit of a cost of learning and education and experience with that stuff.
As there was for us, right? We're trying
That's
to hold
right.
people we're just putting into the standard that we developed over the last 10 years.
Exactly.
And that's an impossible standard.
It's an impossible standard. It's an impossible standard. So yeah, it's tough. So let's talk a little bit about what
Firing clients?
Firing
Is that
clients.
okay?
Yes, firing clients. So well, let's start here because we're in vastly different industries, but is there anything particularly like a red flag or something that will make you fire a client? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I've fired clients for 3 different reasons. The first 2 are the ones that I think are more important.
Okay.
One person I fired because the husband was extremely disrespectful and
Like cussing you out?
inappropriate.
Like cussing you out or like
No, to my assistant.
Oh, okay.
Of
Yeah, I'll play
basically
them
coming in the office and hitting on her.
Oh, geez.
And just being
Obnoxious.
Yeah,
And you
just
said he
being
was
gross.
married?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's gross.
Weird. And I'm big, almost like the Papa Bear. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you're not going to touch my employees.
Yeah.
And I'm going to protect you at all costs.
Yeah.
And that's my job.
Ben is not afraid to smack somebody upside the head. Is what we're
Right,
getting. No,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
So if you're gonna be that way towards an employee of mine, you can just take your business elsewhere.
yeah.
Second one was pretty blatant racism.
Oh, Jesus. That's awful.
and-
I've never experienced that. Like
Yeah.
from a client.
Yeah, it was weird
Oh,
of how
God.
easy it rolled off this person's tongue. And same thing. It's just, there's too many good people out there that we could serve
Yeah.
that I'm not going to waste any time on somebody that's just going to be closed-minded and ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those 2 are extremely more important.
Yeah.
The one that you can put up with a little bit more, but I fired some, are the do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah.
Where
We get those a lot.
they come to you for your expertise,
And
then they try to tell you how to do your job. And it's like,
it's the worst.
would you like to do it yourself, or would you like to actually trust that we know what we're doing?
Yeah.
Because this is our career, and you heard over cigars and a beer on the 19th hole at the golf club about some stock.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that can get too extreme.
Yeah.
You got to just go do this yourself.
Do you think with that, because I think that one's the hardest. The other 2 are easy. I mean, go on. You know?
Yeah, I think so.
But with that third situation, because like our golden standard with this, right, is because we get a lot of that too. We get a lot of that, like, well, I think you should do it this way. And I mean, I've had clients that were just outright, blatantly 100% wrong about what they were thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a little rough around the edges sometimes. I'd be like, that ain't gonna work. You know? Sometimes you got to tell them how it is. But at the same time, I always say, look, it's your business, your money, right? And so that ain't gonna work. But we'll do it, and we'll track it. And then a month from now, I'm gonna be right, and you're gonna be mad at me.
Yeah.
But like that's the way it's gonna be, you know. It's so funny because I've had it on both sides, where I've had that conversation of like, that ain't gonna work, and then we do it anyway, and then it didn't work.
So here's my concern about that strategy.
Yeah.
Is they'll still get upset at you, right? Even if you tell them beforehand, this isn't going to work, but we're going to do it anyway. And so now when they're going out to the community, talking to their friends and family,
Right.
they have a negative connotation of you. And that's my concern.
It's concerning. I mean, that's happened. You know, it's happened with us before. The funniest thing that's ever. Oh my God. This was when we first got into business. We worked with this guy, and he owned it was something in the house. Let's just say it was a painting company. That's easy, right?
Sure.
And let's just say it was a painting. I don't remember what it was. It's 10 years ago. He had this like painting company, right? And so we gave him access to all of his stuff, like we always do. And he got in and started finagling with it, like with painting company. And so we're running Google ads for him at the time. And he goes in and he adds the word paint as a negative keyword. Okay, so that means that if you type paint near me, interior paint my house, exterior paint this, paint that, whatever, it's not even just that his ad doesn't pop up, it's that it can't.
Right.
It's a negative keyword, you know? And so I wake up one day and I'm like, what the hell is going on with this, you know? And we have no idea. I'm spending an hour on this
Trying to figure out what's
trying
going
to figure
wrong.
out what's happened. And I'm like, what is this all about? And then, you know, I call him and I'm like, man, I just don't know what's happened. Like everything was fine, and then it wasn't. And then comes to find out, and like it's so crazy because like in my heart, I'm like, you idiot, like it just you feel this ball of bile in your stomach, and you're like, I hate you, But then you're like, well, that probably wasn't the best idea in the world, and the funny thing is, it created hours of work to fix just because it was, shit hit the fan, But you're absolutely right, and we got in that situation where he did that, and then his community environment was like, oh, these guys don't know what they're doing or whatever. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it is concerning,
I'd almost rather just turn that away.
Yeah.
Or once you realize it, let them go.
Right.
Because otherwise, the negative press and publicity you'll get from that is far worse.
Oh, sure.
Than maybe I can hang on to this revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and I think also that you have to wait. And I'm speaking particularly like young and up and coming entrepreneurs and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make intelligent decisions in the sense of you have to wait until your business is of a certain size where you can start kind of, because at first you kind of just take everything, like anything and everything, get your revenue up, get your profit up and everything like that. And then you can start being a bit more selective about the clients that you get and stuff. And then that's like that's the nectar place to be. Like you be selective.
There's a saying, at least there was at Jones. I think it's just financial advising in general. It says if you can fog a mirror, and that's the concept. When you're first starting your career, if they can fog a mirror, you're gonna open up an account for them. You're just gonna take anything.
Yeah.
But you obviously have to
fog a mirror.
Meaning if you can breathe.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
okay. I got you. I was like,
if you have a pulse and you can breathe.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna open up an account for you.
Yeah.
But very quickly that can't be the strategy.
No.
Right? Otherwise you have 1,000 clients and the worst business in the world.
Yeah, 1,000 clients when your net portfolio is like 100,000 in total. Everybody gave you a tenner and then whatever. No, that's interesting. It's so funny. One of the things I'm sure you feel the same way about your show, but you meet all these people with different life experiences and they work in different businesses and things, and the business concepts remain the same. Like here we are in wildly different industries, and we experience the same things. It's kind of an incredible thing. That
I value learning from people outside the industry.
Yeah.
Way more than the people inside the industry because it becomes an echo chamber.
Yeah.
But if I can get something you're doing and apply it to my industry and vice versa, we're going to be doing a strategy that none of our competitors have even thought about.
Yeah.
So I love. Like going to Vistage or going to any type of event, and especially doing the podcast, you get to hear so many so much advice and so many ideas that you wouldn't have any exposure to if you stayed in your industry.
Right. Yeah. No, and I don't know how you feel about your industry particularly, but in marketing, the conferences and things like it's cool that you get to see some of the up and coming technology. Like I can honestly tell you that my firm we had a really good idea about what the impacts of AI were going to be long before ChatGPT. Like we saw the writing on the wall with that, and we adapted to it. We used some of the original beta. Like there was one that was called Jarvis, which was basically like ChatGPT's predecessor and stuff. So, but I mean, like we got into that like way early, but at the same time, it's like you catch people that they complain about the same things, but it's like that's not productive to find a solution or to find a niche that you can operate within. So it just is what it is. Okay, let's get back to wealth. So so cryptocurrency. What is your opinion on cryptocurrency? You got to give me. You are certified, so I want you on record with this one.
Yeah, right.
And
so
tell me about it. Yeah.
And this is where I make sure I don't step over the regulatory lines.
Yeah.
Let's just not give advice.
Right.
Yeah. So my thought is the technology behind it is real.
Yeah.
The stuff that you can do as far as security and on the blockchain and the contracts and things like that, I think there's real business applicability.
Makes sense.
What that looks like as far as using it as actual currency, I think that's dramatically secondary.
Sure.
I think the technology behind it is more important.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
But because of how real that is, I think we're going to see use of it, and it's going to be in our businesses in some capacity.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, there was a time when they were talking about, well, for example, I told you I used to be in the car industry, right? And there's so much forgery and fakery in the car industry. It's ridiculous, especially in old muscle cars, just the way that it is. But there was talks of let's say I have a, I don't know, 1963 split window Corvette or something like that, and I have the title, and I sign over the title to you, and I give you the title. There were talks of, especially on high value $1 million plus cars, where I would also give you an NFT that signifies the transaction of that vehicle, right? And you can't fake that,
Right?
So I was just very interested to think about that, because that's a better technology than we've ever had in that environment.
It's not close.
No, like it's light years above everything else. So my prediction on this is that in our lifetimes, we're going to see that type of transaction taking place with deeds of houses and vehicles and expensive paintings is another one, because paintings are often forged, like just stuff like that. But anyway,
no, I agree. Whereas the currency side, like I think it was Venezuela that made it their primary currency, or made Bitcoin.
Yep.
But when you have a currency that one day is worth 4 times what it is the next day, you can't do that, right?
No.
Because if you go to the store to buy a banana and it's going to cost you 27 cents, and the next day it's going to cost you $2.50, and then the next day after that it's back to 80, like, there's no stability. You can't go to a grocery store like that.
Do you think, without giving advice, hashtag FDIC, without giving advice, do you think that cryptocurrencies and blockchain, because right now I think it's fair to say that they're highly volatile. Like you said, they can be worth 4x tomorrow and 50% the next, or whatever. Do you think that they're eventually gonna have some sort of stability, or do you think there's too much market manipulation with them?
No, I think so. That would be my guess, because if you go back and look at anything when it first started, you look at stocks, you look at commodities, whatever. They are very volatile early on because everybody's trying to figure it out.
Right.
And now you add the technology and knowledge behind it, so now you have even more ignorance. Whereas if somebody's buying gold, they at least understand what gold is. With this, they could be buying Bitcoin and have no idea what Bitcoin actually is. And so that volatility, my guess, tampers down, or at least you get some that become stable funds, meaning they're going to be used for currency. It acts more like the US dollar.
It kind of has like a expectation of it.
It has to. Otherwise, the cryptocurrency part will go away, and it'll just strip down to the blockchain and the technology, and that'll just get used.
I don't know. I love talking about that because it's like futuristic. It almost feels like we're buying stuff with Star Trek credits or something.
No, I've had sports injuries and major back issues and herniations and all that. And a few months ago, probably 2 months ago, I got stem cell shots.
Oh wow!
And I'm healing internally, and it is science fiction. It's absurd, the tech that's out there. I mean, 20 years ago we didn't have smartphones, and now we are printing houses.
Right? So
we're living
anything at any time. It's I don't know. I'm excited for technology, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't scare the shit out of me. I mean, especially with the additions of AI and stuff. Like I think that there's going to be we're gonna have to adapt. I mean,
there's going to be another like industrial revolution type thing.
I think so too.
And everybody gets scared whenever we go through that, because everybody thinks we're all going to lose jobs. No, our jobs are just going to look different.
They're just going to change.
We're not working on farms anymore, working in factories. We've got machinery that's doing that. And now it's going to be the same type thing. We're not going to need to sit at a computer and write and rewrite to put an article out there. We're going to use the technology that's there. And same thing for video editing, and we're going to replace jobs, and those people are going to get different types of jobs. That's all.
Different. It's like a different skill set. I wonder about. I wonder a little bit about the human capacity for knowledge, and so like I think about, for instance, if nowadays they teach calculus in high school, right? And back in even the early 1900s, I mean, calculus was reserved for like the smartest, most brilliant people in existence, and now it's something that's very commonly taught. And so I almost find myself wondering if people are going to be able to if they're going to reach an intellectual capacity, if that makes sense, or if it's just
that we have an intellectual ceiling. And the technology is going to start going up and beyond what we're going to be able to actually comprehend.
And then at the same time, I mean, Ben, I think we're already there in many ways. Like you could give me 1 million years and unlimited resources, and I would never be able to produce an iPhone. like I have no idea how it works. It's just some magical device that sits in my pocket that does everything for me.
There's a Nate Bargatze stand-up where he talks about if he went back in time, he would do worse because he would try to explain things and not be able to actually explain them. He's like, I would just do worse in the 1920s than I'm doing today.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Like I don't know, it's a scary reality. My hope is that we just don't end up in like the Terminator times. Like like that's a very real possibility, and it's very scary. But like I don't know.
You're already seeing it in China and things like that. They're tracking everything with cameras. Even if they can't see your face, they know what your gait is when you walk. So if you're jaywalking, you're just going to get a ticket in the mail, even if your face is completely covered. So there's a lot of that stuff already that it's not happening. I mean, some is, but most isn't happening here.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you look at China and some of those other communist type places, a lot of that's already there.
Well, I mean, and it does happen here too, because it's like if you streak at the Super Bowl, for instance, like you can't step 2 feet in an NFL stadium, like they will know immediately and kick you out, you know. But I don't know, it's exciting times, needless to say. But anyway. Well, Mr. Ben, I think that pretty much wraps up our time for today, man. It's been a wonderful show. Not that I expected any less, but let's
fortunately.
Fortunately. So I always try to sign off with like a fun question or funny. So here's my question for you. Who's the better podcaster, you or Gary, and why? Why?
Man.
Yep. and you can't
I can't defer. This isn't like one of those shows where I can take a shot instead.
You can't defer. You have to choose.
Man. I mean, so I would say as a podcaster, I think I'm better.
Okay.
But I don't think the show is nearly as good without him.
That makes sense.
Meaning, if Gary had to run the show by himself, I don't think he'd enjoy it at all.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So
have y'all done all of your episodes together, by the way, or have you ever?
Yeah.
Also, okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
There have been a couple.
You hear that, Christian? Ghost.
Got to be
Christian.
here at every one, Christian.
Yep.
Yeah, he's interviewed me and I've interviewed him, but other than those, we've done every episode together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my politically
correct
answer.
Gary? Ben's better, and he admitted it. Well, I mean, objectively speaking,
the flip side though is when you say podcaster, I think running the podcast.
Sure.
But the reach that I had when I was doing it myself versus the reach that we have with him because of how great of a networker and relationship guy he is, we're reaching significantly more people.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, he blows me away.
Yeah.
On that part of the podcasting.
And that's the nice thing. I just like to ask incendiary things like that. But, it's just fun. It's just fun for me.
Let's poke the bear and see what happens.
Yeah, just see what happens. That's who I am as a person. But, it's very much one of those things where it's like 1 + 1 = 8, because you don't have to do it without him. And you have his reach and his skill set on the show. You guys complement each other well on the show. Yep. You guys have different conversational skills. You have different additions to the show. And it's like you guys multiply the benefit. It's not like it's 1 + 1 = 2. You know? So,
yeah. Well, and the fun. I would guess neither of us would be doing a podcast if we had to do it on our own. That's my guess. We each would have stopped.
Yeah. You would have been one of the 95%.
That's right.
Didn't make it past 10.
It's so much better doing it with him.
Oh, for sure. Well, Ben, let's go have lunch, man.
Perfect. I appreciate this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be on the other side, right?
That's right.
That's it. All right, man. Take care.